At some point after a couple of these, I noticed that there is this female entity communicating through my third eye and sharing stuff with me. But she said something like this: you've been locked in this dimension and you cannot evolve until you're gonna change. And she meant that as a message to a whole of humanity, right? It wasn't about me, it was about us as a human race. She showed me this plant. Basically, it's like a vision download I received from her. And she cut the plant with something like a sword, like a samurai sword, like plant broke in half and started bleeding with red blood. And she explained to me, you see, plants are alive, like you and me, but you have to eat something, so just have a balance in what you eat, how you eat things, just have a balance. Hey, this is Mike Sula from TrueTheory.com and welcome to another episode of True Spirituality. So, True Spirituality is my series where I talk about metaphysics, esoteric ideas and teachings, mysticism, shamanism, consciousness, spirituality, a little bit of everything. So if you like these types of topics, welcome. If you're new here, please subscribe. Have a look at previous episodes as well, because we have over 80 videos already. And before we gonna start, quick announcement. So have a look at my online course called Exit the Matrix. Go to truetheory.com/academy and check it out. It's a personal development course with over 30 modules that helps people to transform their lives and figure out what is blocking them in reaching their goals and reaching their full potential. And it has some bonus sections, and it has actually a guided meditation, which is the heart chakra meditation, that a lot of people like. So currently I'm offering it at half price. You can get the whole course for as little as $60, and this is a limited offer. So all you have to do is use the coupon code Black Friday together at checkout. Go to truetheory.com/academy, and this is only for the next 40 people. Already a couple of people bought it. So if you're interested, want to help yourself, improve yourself, maybe learn some really cool meditation method, this is for you. I think the meditation is probably worth $50-60. So this is an amazing offer. Check out truetheory.com/academy and use the coupon code Black Friday together at checkout. All right, so let's talk about aliens a little bit. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be skeptical about what I'm going to share. So if you are a skeptic, I'm asking you to watch till the end, because at the end, something happened in that trip that confirms that this wasn't a hallucination or anything like that. If you're someone who finds it funny or it's skeptical about claims such as this one, I want to ask you to have an open mind about these things, because how do you know if this is not true? You know, there are a lot of people who claim to have experiences with extraterrestrials on psychedelics, on DMT. We know that shamans contacted gods and deities for thousands of years using plant medicines. So maybe there is something to it. You know, I always say, think about it. People ridiculed that someone proposed that we might have bacteria, for example, that we might have a world that is invisible to our eyes, where you have microorganisms, right? That was ridiculed by doctors and scientists before it was proven. So maybe it is like that with different dimensions or densities, and maybe there are different frequency ranges which your senses cannot decode. Even scientists say that we see very little fraction of reality, visible light, and perhaps there is dark matter and dark energy. So if there are these things, maybe there are organisms that are beyond our range of frequencies that we can interpret with our senses. So all I'm saying here is have an open mind about these things if you are a skeptic. So since 2015 until 2022, I've been doing plant medicine sessions for 7 years, mostly mushrooms, sometimes some DMT or ayahuasca, but mostly mushrooms. And typically it would be prepared session somewhere in the nature, in the mountains, with some kind of format that I had, which is mostly to ask my higher self for guidance and show me the right things and protection, things like that. And I had a lot of really crazy experiences during these sessions, like all sorts of really crazy things. You know, I'm sharing bits and pieces of what I've experienced there, and today I want to share with you what happened during one of these sessions. So in 2021, that was like beginning of July, I've done mushroom ceremony in the mountains in south of Poland, and you know, I picked some place, went with my cousin who typically would assist me during these sessions, and we took mushrooms. I think I had like 4 grams or something, and I had a lot of sessions that were positive, negative, sometimes interactions with negative beings, positive beings. This one was very nice. It was like 98% very positive session, which wasn't common. So that was a very nice session for me. And it started with me getting some kind of visions and downloads about the control system on Earth. Another thing I want to say here is that during those 7 years, some of these sessions were continuations. So, you know, I would learn something about one thing in one session, then in the second session I would get more information about it. So it's kind of hard to talk about it without context sometimes. You would have to see what I've been doing in each session. But, you know, that's a lot of information. So let's just stick with this particular session. So, for example, I was being shown that the marriage is a form of control. And you might think like, this is ridiculous. How can you control someone through marriage? The next day, when I was thinking about some of the things I experienced and I was analyzing them, you know, I thought about this, like, why would marriage be a form of control? You know, when I was having this download, it was like I was shown a wedding in a church and things like that. And when I thought about it the next day, I had this download, and someone from my family who was in unhappy marriage for decades, this kind of, you know, was shown to me as an example, and I thought like, yeah, it actually makes some sense, because she said that, you know, she was in a marriage with someone she didn't love, he was cheating on her, but she didn't want to leave because she said she was raised Catholic, and you know, going through a divorce is a shame, is a sin, blah 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 blah. So here you have an example how something made up like a marriage is actually forcing sometimes people to be with each other even if they don't feel like doing that. In the history, you know, in the past, there were all these crazy things where a wife would not get permission from a husband to get divorced and things like that, you know. Very often people would be forced to be in marriages or arranged marriages where people might not love each other, but my dad said you gotta marry this guy, and you know, you're doing it. So of course marriage is a form of control system to some extent. A lot of people don't see it this way. So during different sessions I was getting a lot of tips about different aspects of our society, how they are influencing. And in that particular session, another thing what came was, and this is before I started getting the communication with this female. Another thing was about the current LGBT thing going on all around in the media. So there's a lot of polarization. People argue about it, you know, the pronouns thing and taking a biological male into sport competition or beauty contests and things like that, right? I was shown that this is also a form of control, and this is by design. It's always about divide and conquer, right? It's always about making people argue. I don't know exactly what is the deeper reason behind it. I'm sure there is more. And obviously, I'm not attacking it in any way, you know. I'm just saying what I was shown. So at some point after a couple of these, I noticed that there is this female entity communicating through my third eye and sharing stuff with me. Now, I did not see her, but it was a conversation for like 3 hours. So, you know, when you are connected through the third eye and you get downloads, it's back and forth, it's like telepathic. I could feel everything about her, you know. I didn't see her, but I knew she's older, because it's like your senses are different, right? Your senses are amplified. So I know who I'm talking to. It's almost like I can hear the tone of her voice and everything about her. So she was older, she was like human, you know, she definitely seems like a humanoid figure, like a Pleiadian or something like that, or a human. She was very kind, very loving, and very wise, and also very gentle in how she was talking to me. Now, one of the first things she said, she started with this, and I'm saying, you know, I'm giving you my interpretation using language, because obviously downloads are just pure information and telepathic, right? So I'm just describing what she said. It wasn't exactly the same language, but she said something like this: you've been locked in this dimension and you cannot evolve until you're gonna change. And she meant that as a message to a whole of humanity, right? It wasn't about me, it was about us as a human race. And she gave me the name of who supposedly locked us here, and I did not get the name straight away, because sometimes it was like a lot of information. She was giving some specific names and specific concepts and things like that, so I did not catch the name when she said it. But because, like I said, this is a continuation, it's like one of many sessions, I was explained more about it. In fact, I even had an interaction with this guy. So, you know, we're talking about Lucifer here. She said that Lucifer, in a way, locked humans' souls on Earth. And this is something I've been talking about in one of my previous videos, how souls are trapped. Some souls are trapped on Earth, because the way that the game works is that people, through their actions, polarize themselves as service to self or service to others. And because this whole materialistic society, capitalistic society, is the trick of, you know who, people thinking that they just live their lives and they contribute to building economy and things like that, they polarize themselves very often as service to self. And if person is more service to self than it is service to others, they are stuck in the reincarnation cycle on Earth. And if the person is very, very, very selfish, like 95% service to self, they join the negative. So this is the trick, right? This is what she was communicating. So before these sessions, I would typically have a list of questions, some kind of intentions that I was already setting up for weeks before the session. And she would answer quite a few of these without me even bringing them during the session. So obviously that's another interesting thing, that she was familiar with my intentions before the ceremony. So one of my questions already in advance was about eating eggs. So at that time I was oscillating a lot between vegan and vegetarian diet, and I was having these thoughts like, is eating eggs something negative, something bad, you know, like, you know, I don't want to kill animals, so what about the eggs? So she just brought it up without me even asking about it. And she showed me this plant. Basically it's like a vision download I received from her, and she cut the plant with something like a sword, like a samurai sword, like plant broke in half and started bleeding with red blood. And she explained to me, you see, plants are alive like you and me, but you have to eat something, so just have a balance in what you eat, how you eat things, just have a balance. And you know, it was, like I said, 3-hour conversation, so we were going back and forth, and sometimes he would get into something very personal about my life, which made me think that she's just one of my spirit guides, because she knew so much about my life. One of the things she said was like, when you teach others, hide your ego. And I was like, I know what she's talking about. So I was like, I know, I understand. I can be sometimes a little bit egocentric. So I said, I understand, thank you, you know. So it was kind of like this conversation between, imagine like this wise grandma who is talking to a little grandson and sharing all the wisdom, and he's like, yeah, thank you grandma, thank you grandma. This was kind of the feeling I had. I was like, it's such a shock. And another thing, so she showed me a scene, and I don't remember much, but it looked like a battle, like a battlefield. And she said, you fought a lot of battles already with the dark side. Another thing, she touched my hand. So I have this birthmark, I don't know if you can see it, but here, right? Which appeared when I was a teenager on my right hand. And she touched this thing and said that this is some kind of symbol or a sign from my past lives where I was a reptilian. And this might sound a little bit controversial, but during some of these sessions I was learning and I was even experiencing these lifetimes. I would jump into the body where I used to have these types of lifetimes. I've had a lot of different types of lifetimes already, so they were negative, they were positive. That's why I said it's a continuation of sessions, because in different sessions I was learning different things about all this stuff. And she started giving like specifics, names, like some kind of, I don't know what was it, like a clan or a group or whatever. I do not remember exactly what she said, because she gave like a very specific term or some kind of name. Then she was saying, you know, they will probably try to stop you from going to London, because after the session in a couple of days I was about to move to London after being away for like whatever, 2 years, a couple of years. You know, there are a lot of these like personal things. So one of my intentions before the session, I had these thoughts about my former partner, who is my twin flame. And I heard about people who on psychedelics would either like talk to a spirit of a child before it was born. So let's say the wife was pregnant or something, and or before the pregnancy or something like that, and the spirit of the child would come and introduce themselves that I'm gonna be your daughter, right? Or another person said something about that before his daughter was born, during the ceremony he saw her face, and then when she became older, this was her face, right? Before she was born. So of course we're dealing with the different dimensions in spirit world and things like that, so they're in that form before they come here. So I had these thoughts, you know, what if maybe me and my ex, let's say, maybe we had some kind of agreement like that, that we have to bring someone here, like a soul, you know. So she picked up that from my intentions before. I think I didn't mention that during the session when I was talking to her. She just started talking about it. So again, it shows that she knows me, she knows stuff about me, and she probably knew my intentions before the ceremony, because that was one of my intentions in the past, to understand some of the stuff. So she said, you and Raquel, that's the name of my former partner and twin flame, you're getting older and you went through a lot of ups and downs already, and whichever way you're gonna decide is up to you. If you're gonna, for example, decide to have a child, whatever, it's up to you. So here is an interesting thing to think about. She did not say, yes, you know, you're gonna have a child together or whatever. She said, it's up to you, right? She said, it's your choice, it's your life, it's between two of you, etc. This is very important, because higher beings that are positive, they don't want to influence your free will. So if she would say that, yes, you know, this is your path or something, then I would start believing in that and I would start doing something towards it, right? But I have a choice. That's why she shared it in this way, because it's up to me, right? it's up to us, between us, and she doesn't want to influence that because it would create karma for her. If she would tell me that one thing or the other, then I would start doing something about it and try to make it a reality. But this is only one of many options, and it should be my choice in between me and the girl. Another interesting thing about it, like I said, she was very kind, very loving, and very wise and older. When you hear about, for example, in the Law of One, they talk about how the higher you are in evolution as service to others, you are more balanced between wisdom and love, right? So these beings are very loving and very wise, and she was exactly like that. Then she showed me Ben Stewart, who is a filmmaker that I really admire, and we've been talking about making a documentary series about some of my experiences. So we started talking about it in 2020, and I didn't know him before. He was always like someone I was admiring for his documentary films like Kaimatica, etc. But I started talking to him about this idea that maybe we could make a documentary about some of my experiences. And he showed me him without me even asking anything about him. And she said she grabbed my right leg to confirm it, like very firmly. She grabbed my leg and said, "You and Ben, you know each other from previous lifetimes." And I was in shock because it looks like nothing here is an accident. None of these things. For now, this documentary, unfortunately, is always about money, it's always about time, and we are not having money to create it. But it was a project, and I hope it's gonna unfold at some point in the right time. Then she said something about magic mushrooms. She said, like, you know, when you take mushrooms, it depends on the doses, and they will create different levels of, you know, consciousness that you can reach. So she was explaining this to me about the doses and things like that. Now, there were a lot of personal things. They're probably not gonna go into it. That's why I say I think she's my spirit guide, because she knew so much about my personal life. So towards the end of the session, you know, it was summer. I went to this hill with my cousin. It was like a little bit in the mountains. He was not feeling well. He was in fact just like laying in grass somewhere and having his own stuff. And I was just like sitting, focusing on my third eye, and you know, enjoying that, and sitting in such a shock. And I would just grab some water. We had like 2 bottles of water, and I would just grab it, have a sip, throw it in on the ground, and just continue focusing and having this conversation with her. And I did not pay attention, but I actually drank entire water when my cousin was like laying somewhere in the grass. It was hot. He was not feeling well. He was overweight. You know, we had a little hike, and at the end of the session he was dehydrated, and I didn't even know that, you know, it was also my fault because I drank most of the water. So when things were fading already, when mushrooms were fading, he started saying that, you know what, I'm not feeling well. I think you'll have to leave me here and go downstairs to get some water. It was a bit of a hike. It wasn't so easy to get to the store or to the hotel. So when he started saying that, this is at the end of the session, right? This is when we're kind of getting back to normal, let's say. He started saying this, and in that moment, boom, I get a download and a vision. Remember about the dream you had a couple of days before. So what happened? So before we even went to do this session, like 3 days before, something like that, I had a dream where in that dream we were doing the ceremony and we decided to split, and he didn't come back to the hotel. So we were warned before the ceremony, like 3 days before, about the outcome of the ceremony, because, you know, I didn't even know. I was picking these places randomly. I like booked some hotels just before. I decided, like, looked at the map, I thought, like, let's hike here, let's go to this mountain. So it was completely random place, right? But before that, it was already known that we're gonna get into a situation where he gonna get dehydrated because I gonna drink all the water, and we're gonna decide we're gonna split. And then he's not gonna come back or we're gonna get lost. So I was warned at the end of the ceremony, like, remember about the dream. I was like, this was the dream. That was why I had this dream, because I was warned that we are gonna end up in this scenario. So I hope you are getting what happened here. What it means is that this whole thing was already calculated at least a few days in advance. She knew that he's gonna feel weak, I'm gonna be so overwhelmed and blown away that I'm gonna just be drinking water like crazy and not pay attention to what he's doing, and then he's gonna start feeling weak. So think about it. If you think you could explain as a hallucination this whole thing, think about it. The outcome was already known in advance. She calculated, this is what's gonna happen. So let's warn him 3 days before in the dream. So when he started saying that he's feeling weak and I'm gonna have to leave him, I got this download, remember about that dream. Then I decided, okay, so I'm not leaving you. Let's do a little bit of pranic breathing, like the breath of fire through the nose, like this kind of rapid breathing through the nose, because this increases the flow of prana in the system. And we started doing that. We did it for 5 minutes or something, and he started feeling better. He got the energy back, and then we decided to go together. And we got lost on the way anyway, because it was like a mountain. It wasn't like a big hike, maybe like 40 minutes, whatever, something like that. But we just lost the path and went around and stuff like that. So finally, I remember one thing I forgot to add. Something got me to hug the tree towards the end, and I hugged this tree and I felt consciousness in that tree. I felt a little bit like very static animal. You could think about it as animal. Some simple consciousness that was just very static, but you could feel a presence of life. It wasn't just, piece of wood. It was actually a being. The tree was a being. So this is most of the story. There were more things, but some personal things she was sharing with me. Let me know what you think about it. I'm not saying gotta believe in these things, but this is one of my experiences. I think I'm gonna be sharing more what happened during these sessions, because I was having a lot of interactions like that. And if you enjoyed the video, please share it with others. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. If you ever had any of these types of experiences with psychedelics or anything like that, let me know as well. And please follow me on Instagram. It's Mike Segula on Instagram. And thank you so much for checking another episode of True Spirituality. Until next time.